Welcome back to SM Sports Radio. This is our second episode, being back in person with Micah being back from Auburn here for the summer. Super excited for today's episode. Got a loaded show for you guys today. So let's hop right into it with some Major League Baseball talk. Tyler Glasnow and Michael King, a really good duel the other night. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so out in San Diego, this massive rivalry between the Dodgers and the Padres, and two really good pitchers going out, Tyler Glasnow and then Michael King, who formerly a bullpen guy, has moved to starting rotation, has really kind of settled in there a good bit. And this is the first game in MLB history where both starting pitchers went 7 or more innings while also striking out 10 plus. Glasnow is a guy I really like for maybe a Cy Young this season, and he was great. 7 innings, only allowed 1 hit. It was a bomb, which is kind of unfortunate. Walked a guy, struck out 10, but he was kind of outdueled by Michael King, who also went 7 but struck out 11, didn't allow any runs at all, and only 2 hits. So great game for both of these guys.
Yeah, we can't really move past that without mentioning, if you haven't seen Micah's little rant, it's a reel on our SM Sports Radio Instagram account about how Padres versus Dodgers is just not a rivalry despite what the media wants you to think. So go check that out. That's probably some of Micah's best work so far in the short form.
Listen, all you need to know is that it was in San Diego. It was a massive series, and there was a parade of Dodger fans through the heart of the city. So that you can't call it a rivalry when you're consistently owned, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then getting back to Glasnow, as someone who's watched one of his starts against the Braves this season, that man is definitely on a mission and will find himself at least, I think, solidly in the top 3 for NL Cy Young.
Yeah, especially to keep parlaying out guys.
For sure.
Just please don't get injured.
Yeah, another guy that absolutely shoved, once again, Shota Imanaga, my NL Rookie of the Year pick, who is pretty much showing himself to be the steal of the offseason.
Oh, for sure.
A contract of only just over $13 million per year annually with the Cubs. Yamamoto, who shoved again on Monday night against the Braves. 5 innings pitched. He did allow 7 hits, but able to navigate around those hits allowed and 3 walks to give up, once again, another 0 earned runs allowed, and his ERA back down to .96. The Braves were able to get to the Cubs bullpen, however, and came out on top, but that doesn't really have anything to do with my Imanaga propaganda, so I'll continue to push that.
Yeah, it really feels like Imanaga. Guys can sometimes get on base, but it's really hard to string together those multiple base runners, and especially moving forward. It's just feels like once you get a guy to second versus Imanaga, it's like, okay, none of you are ever touching a baseball ever again. It just mows through people. So yeah, I don't know who's going to figure him out. I still don't think a team has seen him twice yet this season, so I think that'll be the big first test for sure. But for now, he looks pretty unstoppable.
Yeah, you talk about a pitcher not seeing a team twice. Yeah, we've seen another pitcher in Sonny Gray kind of run into the same sort of deal. His ERA was under 1 up until he saw the Brewers for the second time this season. He gave up, I think, 4 or 5 earned runs. But then as an Imanaga supporter, who last night was the first start I really got to see in full, and he showed off a pretty good pickoff move, picked off Ronald Acuna Jr.
Oh, that's not hard lately.
Who has been picked off picked off 3 consecutive times on base going back to Sunday Night Baseball against the Mets. Those 2 games that game against the Mets, those 2 consecutive times, I couldn't really blame him for those. He wanted to get a big lead because the Mets are quite literally the worst team at catching runners trying to steal bases. I believe it was going into that game 51 out of 55 successful stolen base attempts with Francisco Alvarez going down. So Ronald Acuna was trying to take advantage of that a little bit. And a lot of people have asked me if I think that it's a lack of effort for Ronald or if it's laziness. And I wouldn't use that word. The word that I would use is probably just a state of being nonchalant about things. And that's just not something we've grown accustomed to seeing in Ronald Acuna Jr.'s young career. So hopefully Brian Snitker is able to get his attention. Ozzie Albies also picked off in that game Monday night. So hopefully that's not going to be happening again in the near future. I don't think it will with as talented of a player as Ronald Acuna is and with as little funny business as Brian Snitker seems to put up with. But shout out to you, Caleb May, for that idea, and definitely a great little segment to talk about.
Yeah, and talking about Acuna, he's been, like you're talking about, kind of that nonchalant so far this season. Last night, another play in right field where the ball was kind of tracking towards the wing. Like, is he going to get to it? He just kind of just up against the ball. And
Very
that
nonchalant.
could have been really bad really quickly. But just something about all these Braves stars so far this season feels just off. It's like the team hasn't really gelled. And then with the loss of Spencer Strider as well, how well can you rely on just Max Fried and then kind of a crazy season from Reynaldo Lopez to keep bailing you out?
That's what I offer you, Chris Sale. He's looking.
That's true.
You pull up his baseball save-on page. I don't know how to pronounce that, but he's looking as close to that prime form as he has since 2018, 2017. I would argue he's been the best pitcher on the Braves staff, even with the stuff that Reynaldo and Max have shown all season. So I think as long as you can keep those three guys with their A stuff and you can get 5 innings of 4 runs allowed or less from Charlie Morton, I think the Braves rotation is fine. I'm more worried about the health of the position players. You've had guys like Sean Murphy go down with an oblique. Austin Riley now has been out a couple of games with an oblique issue. Thankfully, that was just inflammation. But the injury bug has already plagued this Braves team for much of the season so far, and so they're going to need to get past that in order to catch up to the Phillies and hopefully, for my sake, win the division for the 7th straight year.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be tough. The Phillies look really good this year, and then also that Braves bullpen has kind of been up and down so far this year, so you hope you can get more consistency out of that. But I think at this point we trust the Braves to be able to figure it out, definitely at least over the regular season, but I think maybe you could see a reverse of fortune where this Braves team kind of is second in the division in the regular season, then does figure out in the playoffs, getting everyone back healthy by the time that starts, obviously with the exception of Spencer Strider, but we'll have to see what heads out there. But talked about your Braves. Let's talk about my Reds for a little bit. Something that I both do and really don't want to do right now, as they sit at 1-9 in their last 10, having only won 1 of their last 12 games. It's bad times in Cincinnati, and we're playing the entire NL West for basically the entire month of May. I don't know, we decided that would be a thing, but we cannot beat an NL West team to save our lives right now. Well, what's sad is the starting pitching hasn't even been bad. It's been really solid from the starters. Then the bullpen has been very up and down, but it's really the bats. These guys cannot hit a basketball right now in the batter's box, and it's just so sad to see. Ellie De La Cruz is hitting still pretty well, kind of running that 270 to 280 mark in average, and obviously still stealing a ton of bases, has the MLB lead by 8 right now, 25 versus 17 for the next guy, but the rest of the team just cannot hit at all. And then TJ Friedl coming back and then getting hurt just a week later with a broken thumb. It feels like this team is cursed right now, honestly, with the injuries. Brandon Williamson just now getting sent on a rehab assignment to High A Dayton, and Christian Encarnacion straight out with another fracture. Obviously, there's the Matt McClain injury, who was out until probably September at the earliest. And just these guys keep getting banged up over and over. And I have many questions about David Bell right now. When Justin Wilson got pulled in the Monday night game versus the Diamondbacks, he kind of cussed out David Bell and looked frustrated as he walked off the mound, which usually I get pitchers being frustrated when taking enter a game, but usually in a good locker room environment, you're not right. That kind of reaction being pulled from a game in a spot where it's clear you need to be pulled for a game. So I don't know. And then just the base running mistakes for this team, the mistakes in the field, it feels like there are just a ton of very easily correctable problems with this team that I think it starts in that manager's office.
Yeah, when I think of the Reds, especially lately here in the month of May, I just the first phrase that comes into my mind is a series of unfortunate events.
Yeah,
that's just the state of the Cincinnati Reds right now. I'm not really sure what the root cause of the problem is, but they need to get it figured out and fast, because that NL Central is looking like a 2-man race right now.
Very much losing touch with the Brewers and the Cubs. And let's move into the divisions here as we start with the NL Central. Brewers and Cubs, obviously, as you said, kind of running away. Cubs half a game back. Then the Pirates have now overtaken the Reds for third. And
shout out to Paul Skeens.
Yeah, we've had a pretty decent debut, actually, before the Pirates decided to walk every single batter on the face of the earth in that game.
Yeah, 2 runners that were inherited by the next guy walked in, so that really inflated Skeens' ERA. He left with a 2.25, and I think he left with a 6.5 or something of that nature.
Really got blown by the Pirates bullpen, which is really nothing new.
Right.
And then at the bottom of the NL Central, you have the Reds sitting there with the Cardinals, both at 17 and 24, and like you said, they got to figure this out soon because this is not a good place. Then the NL East, obviously we're talking about the Phillies and the Braves right now, but how about the Nationals sitting there at third at 19-20? This team, as a Reds fan, reminds me a lot of what we saw from the Reds last year.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And C.J. Abrams, I think, has been a really fun young player to watch as well. Then you have the Mets, who are in fourth, and the Marlins, who may or may not be a baseball team, bringing up the rear of this division.
Yeah, they're going to be neck and neck with the White Sox, vying for the worst record in baseball. Already threw in the towel trading Luis Arraez, as we've kind of mentioned in previous shows. And back to the Phillies and the Braves. According to FanGraphs, the Braves have the easiest remaining schedule in Major League Baseball among teams with a greater than 40% chance to make the playoffs. The Phillies, second toughest remaining among those same teams. It looks like just this is not anti-Phillies propaganda or anything. This is just the straight facts. The Phillies have had a much easier schedule to date than the Braves have. Everyone's been super frustrated about the Braves. But guys, the Braves are on a 106 win pace. So I don't know how mad we can really be. This is going to be a really good and fun division race. I've raved about the Phillies starting rotation. I will continue to do that. That trio is definitely the best in the National League, and I'm still going to make the case that it's better than the Mariners starting rotation, but definitely going to be a division race to watch, and I have a hunch that we're going to be seeing these teams face off in the postseason yet again.
Oh, yeah, and if I were a Braves fan, I would really be starting to get sick of the Phillies at this point after the last couple of years, so we'll see if you guys can get it done this season. And then over in the NL West, this is a division just 2 or 3 weeks ago we were talking about, okay, can the Padres make a run? Can the Diamondbacks figure it out? What are the Giants doing?
Right.
Now the Dodgers have just bolted. It's a 6.5 game lead on the Padres to sit at 22-22. The Diamondbacks, even after 2 free series versus the Reds, are still at 20-22. And the Giants, who we already knew would kind of have a maybe middle of the pack lineup this season, they're really struggling because the rotation has not delivered at all. Blake Snell has been awful, and he's now in the IL, so very disappointing, especially for being picked them to win this division, which is looking like a horrible prediction right now. Then the Rockies in their typical place way in the rear.
Yeah. The Giants, I think we've heard a lot about whether Trevor Bauer can fit in an MLB rotation. I think the Giants would be the best fit for Bauer if he were to be signed to an MLB organization.
Yeah, I definitely think that would make sense. Personally, if I were MLB GM after watching the up and down with Bauer for the other weeks, I would not sign him. And then there comes all the off-the-field stuff, right, which is important to MLB teams. And regardless of whether he's cleared or not, I think just a PR disaster.
Right. Yeah.
Just Trevor Bauer's mannerisms on the field can be a possible issue.
No, my point was just like if a team were to sign him, it would be the Giants, I think.
I could see that happening, especially after his time with the Dodgers. To come back, right, their biggest rival, I think would definitely motivate him for sure. But let's move over to the AL here and start with the AL East, where my World Series pick, Baltimore Orioles, sit tied atop this division with the New York Yankees. And I feel like these Yankees got off to such a hot start, and they kind of had maybe a bad week, and everyone just forgot they were good at baseball, but they're still here, still at the top of this thing.
Yeah, absolutely loaded middle of the order with Stanton and Judge, Rizzo. You got Gleyber Torres in there.
Yeah.
Juan Soto. I almost forgot the best hitter in the game of baseball right now. Like, this Yankees lineup is a legit murderer's row, kind of reminiscent of one that we saw in the 20th century. Well, we didn't see it, but other people saw it.
We were there for one in old Yankee Stadium.
Then the Orioles, like you said, super young team, super fun team. Got a lot of young guys with long, blonde, curly hair.
Yeah.
Continuing to do their little baseball thing. Both of these teams 7-3 in their last 10, and this is going to be right along there with the NL East, another really fun division race, I think, that's going to go 162 games.
Yeah, definitely. And I think an X factor for the Yankees that I'd like to talk about here is Giancarlo Stanton. Because whether you're getting, I think it's a big difference whether you get Giancarlo Stanton or Mike Stanton for these New York Yankees. Because Giancarlo Stanton is a big powerhouse middle of the order guy that can really help them make a push. And then Mike Stanton is going to strike out 50 times a game. So it's really, during the long stretch of the summer, which one of those guys are you going to get for the full season? Can he stay healthy? I think it's going to be really important for them. But I'm definitely excited to see how this division race plays out. And I think the most exciting division in baseball might be the AL Central here. This race right now, the Guardians sit at 26-16. The Twins are 1 game back. The Royals are 1.5 games back. And then the Tigers, despite being 3-7 in their last 10, still sit only 4.5 games back in fourth. And the White Sox are barely a baseball team. But these other 4 are really super close. I think it's going to be a great division race for sure.
Yeah, definitely the power of friendship and smiles continuing to lead the way for the Guardians. Kind of a team that, despite their continued success over the season, 42 games in so far, you really don't hear about them much in the national media at all. And I think that's probably because of a lack of star power. The only real big marketable name on that team, Jose Ramirez. Beyond that, you don't really have anyone that just pushes the needle on the national level. The Twins, I haven't really heard much about them either. They're kind of flying under the radar.
They started so
had a big win streak. What was it, 11 or 12?
12 games, yeah.
Absolutely insane. And the Royals, shout out to Papa Dex, my big Royals fan over there in Missouri. They've had a really good season. Bobby Witt Jr. in that AL MVP form.
Which, by the way,
pick there.
I don't know if you saw, but I think it was in the ESPN or Bleacher Report released a shortstop power rank because they had Bobby Witt at 4th.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Which, what are you doing? They had Elliott ahead of him. And as big of a Reds fan as I am, Bobby Witt Jr. is a more complete player than Ellie De La Cruz right now. Yeah, especially defensively.
The only rankings you can put Ellie De La Cruz above Bobby Witt Jr.
Speed
is aura.
Speed and aura, yeah. And speed is close too. It's not like
speed is, they're both in the 99th percentile.
And then the Tigers here, I think they're right now being carried by this rotation, especially Terrence Skubal, who's been just out of this world good so far this season. One of the 2 guys that we have mentioned is AL Cy Young dark horses in this division, him and Cole Reagans. And Skubal has been just amazing for the Tigers scoring. I think it's really one of the only reasons they're hanging on, because this lineup is once again struggling big time right now.
Yeah, I think Cole Reagans has fallen off a little bit. He's up to a 4.2 ERA, 1.29 whip, but still having a pretty good season, contract value-wise.
Yeah, I tell you that who's been really impressive, though, on the Royals. How is Seth Lugo so far this season? He has an ERA of just 1.66, a whip under 1, batting average allowed of 206, and that's in 59.2 innings. This is a guy who was a middling reliever with the Mets and just is suddenly a lockdown starter for the Royals this year.
Yeah, you might even think he's made stops with the Mets, stops with the Padres. Maybe the American League just hasn't seen it as much yet.
Yeah,
that's a big reason for his success with the Royals. He has that wipeout curveball, and teams just can't hit it right now.
No, and it's been really impressive, honestly. So good to see that from Seth Lugo. And then finally, the AL West here. The Mariners and Rangers still sitting kind of right there first and second. How about the A's, though? Only 4.5 games back still in this division. And a round of applause for Houston Astros for no longer being in last, as the Angels have fallen down the base.
Trash can violently.
Yeah, we have a trash can over here next to the table. So
very fitting.
Competing there. But I think this does come down to the Mariners and the Rangers for sure. The Mariners have the rotation. The Rangers have the lineup. It's just which one of these 2 teams can figure the other half of the game out more over the course of the season. And these Astros, this far into the year, I don't think this is a team that might even make a wild card spot this season. They just don't have the pitch.
I think they're cooked.
Yeah.
I think they're cooked.
Kyle Tucker did take the MLB lead at home runs with 13, but the pitching on the Astros is just awful this year. You're not getting anything close to what you wanted out of Josh Hader either.
Which is not something we're used to saying. Usually Houston is a pitching factory.
Yeah. It's been really surprising to see for sure. But unless there's anything else you want to mention, I think that is it for the MLB.
Thanks, we're all covered there.
All right. So let's move over to the NFL, where kind of the second wave of free agency has begun, and we're going to call this the washed receiver phase, as the Titans have signed Tyler Boyd to join their retirement home court. DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley, with young guy Traylon Burks thrown in there as well, has been underwhelming so far. And to me, that doesn't move the needle much. Boyd is a good slot option, but at the end of the day, you still have a terrible offensive line that you're hoping J.C. Latham can really help out a lot, and then Will Levis was only shown flashes. And I think for a young quarterback like Levis, you want to have guys that can separate. Boyd might be the best separator on this team now when you look at Hopkins, Ridley, and Burks, which is like Boyd is a good slot option, but you really still don't have that big outside separator on this team, I don't think.
It seems like we got too many jump ball threats on this roster.
Yeah.
See, just building the island of misfit toys over here. You got a lot of guys kind of over the hill on the downside of their career. Haven't gotten much from Traylon Burks in his NFL career. Then that running back duo, Ty Spears and Tony Pollard. I just want to throw up when I look at this Titans offense.
I like the upside of Ty Spears, I would say. He is missing an ACL. He only has one ACL, but I think he's a good little back. I think you could see some stuff out of Ty Spears this season, especially in that kind of back committee role with Tony Pollard. But then the Dolphins have also gone out on the washed receiver market and signed Odell Beckham Jr., which, why?
It's an aura signing.
Yeah.
Odell to Miami to join Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle.
Yes, because we needed more aura receivers in Miami down there. Maybe figure out how to run a defense or get a quarterback.
Yeah, maybe get a quarterback that is actually competent. Not a big Tua fan over here.
Also, drafting Chop Robinson after your two big edge rushers with their injuries and then the other guys that you've let go in free agency, it looks like you're getting ready to hand out a massive contract to Tua, which, I don't know.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, that's all we'll say about that. But
make sure he wears one of the Guardian caps from now on. He's not allowed to play in a regular helmet.
I want to see a player come out with a Cleveland Guardians cap on for one of the games. Yes. Come out with that instead. I thought this is what they meant.
What do you mean? Yeah.
But then the NFL schedule has also been released, or at least a few games have. And how about Chiefs-Ravens, first game of the year on Thursday Night Football? I am super excited for that.
Yeah, that's going to be a really good game. We saw Chiefs-Lions to open the season last year in Arrowhead with the Lions coming out on top. I think Mahomes is going to come out on a mission this regular season. The Chiefs kind of flew under the radar in the regular season last year, but then do what they do best in the postseason. Shout out to Papa Dex once again. He told me to remind you that the AFC West runs through Kansas City.
As if I didn't know that already. But
he said to keep reminding you, so that's what I'm going to do. So shout out to Papa Dex for being a friend of the pod.
Yes, indeed. One thing I am super excited about for this game, though, is, I'm always looking at the young guys, the NFL draft, and how about the matchup of Xavier Worthy versus Nate Wiggins in this?
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that. Speed versus speed, too. Man,
that is going to be fun.
That's going to be something. And then Hollywood Brown as well against his old team.
Hollywood Brown exists.
Yeah, he's going to be out there.
Xavier,
having a good time.
My hot take for the Chiefs is that Xavier Worthy is receiver one to start the year for this team.
I like that.
Not
a little bit of off the field issues.
A lot of it.
Yeah.
But that's not including Travis Kelce, by the way, but number one wide receiver for the Chiefs, I think, to start the year. Yes. And then another game that I thought deserved mention was Jets 49ers, as the NFL schedule people have gotten up to their funny business, as Aaron Rodgers will once again be starting the season on Monday Night Football, and guess who the 49ers signed?
Looks like Leonard Floyd.
They did, and if you watching the pod don't know the significance of that, Leonard Floyd is the player who sacked Aaron Rodgers to tear his Achilles last season on Monday Night Football to start the year. So they thought it was so nice they should do it twice, and they're bringing this matchup back.
Man, it kind of seems like if you scheduled Bengals-Bills to start the season after the DeMar Hamlin fiasco, but Aaron Rodgers is probably going to do his best to avoid Leonard Floyd, at least in the opening snaps of that game.
Yeah, we'll have to see if Olu Fashanu can hold up, but
yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, Leonard Floyd will not be starting for these 49ers, though, compared to
no.
Yeah, so
definitely
that will be a big difference there. But let's stay on football here and move over to the college side of things, where a lot of games are being announced there as well. How about Clemson, Georgia, as the Clemson Tigers cannot escape the news slot ever, it seems.
Yeah, when I got the news about the noon game, we got a lot of texts coming in, group chats, like, oh, why can't we escape the noon game? For me personally, the game is in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I don't really think that a night game in an indoor stadium means as much to me personally.
No, it doesn't hit the same.
In an outdoor game. So I'm personally fine with this Clemson, Georgia game time being at noon. I hope to be at that game. You kind of avoid having to just anticipate it all day. You kind of just get to watch college game day, and then boom, 12 o'clock hits, and you get to watch your game, Clemson, Georgia. Kind of rivaling, I think, kind of wanting to compete with Big Noon kickoff here. And then another game later on that day, Florida, Miami at 3:30.
Let's pray for those players, guys.
In Gainesville.
In Gainesville at 3:30 in August, we will see a lot of cramping in that game. There's been a lot of talk over the last couple of years about Florida's strength and conditioning program, but let me tell you, if they have not got it together over the offseason, there's going to be a lot of problems. And then we know all the outside issues of Miami of can they ever be run correctly. So this might be, I don't know if you remember the Camping World kickoff game about 5 years ago between Florida and Miami. I would almost expect the same level of
Felipe Sharing's company.
Yeah. But that was the Kadarius Toney welcome to the NCAA game. So fond memories of that.
Back to Clemson, Georgia. Just got to provide my 2 cents here. I think 13.5 is a ridiculous spread. I don't think the Clemson offense is going to be very good, but I think the Clemson defense is going to be top 5 in the country this season. And one thing I will say, if Clemson is going to have a chance to win this game outright, 2 things are going to happen. First, Clemson is going to have a defensive touchdown, and second, they cannot allow a defensive touchdown.
You can't turn the ball over either.
If either one of those 2 things does not happen, Clemson will undoubtedly lose that game. And I think we're going to have to see Kate Klubnik's best game of his career.
Yeah, definitely.
If Clemson is going to have a chance against Georgia there.
And talking about this game, one guy I do want to talk about for a second is Carson Beck. I feel like the entirety of the country is saying, well, why is Carson Beck, like, why are so many talking about Carson Beck? Why is Carson Beck so good? I know it seems like Georgia's just defense recently, but if you watch film last season, Carson Beck can make very high-level throws. This is a very good quarterback. This is not Stetson Bennett version 2.0. Right. Carson Beck is a very good prospect, and I think this season you're really going to see him show it because I think this Georgia team is going to need a lot more offense this year, especially when you look at this schedule that we have pulled up here that it starts with Clemson. So we were talking about the SEC a little bit yesterday and who we think ends up in Atlanta. So we're going to go through the schedules of the quote-unquote top 4 SEC teams, in our opinions, going into the season and honestly what their win totals might be.
I think you're going to see all 4 of these teams in the playoff.
I would agree with that as well, but the first of these teams is the Georgia Bulldogs. They start with the game versus Clemson. I would take Georgia to win that game.
Yeah,
the win total sitting
in Georgia win there.
Then Tennessee Tech 2, Kentucky is 3. Then Alabama in Tuscaloosa, I think that's 4, honestly. I think Alabama's going to be down this year. I don't buy into Kalen DeBoer that much at all. I don't buy into Jalen Milroe that much at all. So
I buy into Jalen Milroe more than I do DeBoer, but still not so much there. I think that if Alabama's going to have a great season and contend, I think they have a great shot to make the college football playoff, but if they're going to win a game in the college football playoff, it's going to take Jalen Milroe kind of turning into a massive dual threat and kind of up to the level that we saw from Lamar Jackson. I think that's what it's going to take to get this Alabama team to that next level.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
I like Georgia there.
Yeah, for sure. So win total sitting at 4. Then versus Auburn, they get Auburn at home this year instead of in Jordan-Hare, so I think that's an easy 5. Auburn not quite there yet. Mississippi State, easy 6. I think they lose in Texas.
They drop the game.
I think they lose to Texas, so 6-1. Florida, unfortunately, Kirby Smart just owns Florida. It's sad, but it's true. So 7-1 there. Then at Ole Miss. This is a game that I can see going either way. I would put this at 7.5.
I'm taking Ole Miss here.
Taking Ole Miss outright. I trust Carson Beck a lot. I think that's what this comes down to here. So you're at 8. I'm at 7.5. I'd give him Tennessee.
I'm at 7. You're at 7. You're at 7.5.
Really?
Yeah, because I'm taking Ole Miss to win this one, so I have them losing.
I was like, you would have less wins. So I at 7.5. You're at 7. Then Tennessee. I think we both give a win there. 8.5, 8. UMass, 9.5, 9. Then Georgia Tech, 10.5, 10. So win total for Georgia sitting right, kind of at that 10.
I could see anything between 9-3 and 12-0 here.
Yeah,
they're all plausible. They're all plausible to happen. I think most likely is 10-2, just based on the toughness of this schedule. Mm-hmm. One that Georgia really hasn't. They haven't seen that schedule anywhere near this tough in years.
Which finally,
thank you, SEC scheduling people, for finally doing this.
Yeah, the new schedule is definitely working. Yeah, now, let's move over to a team that we were split on what would happen when they play Georgia. Let's talk about Ole Miss. And they start off with Furman, which our friend Jonathan Moore would say is an easy dub for the Paladins, but I'm going to go 1-0 for Ole Miss here. Then 2 versus Middle Tennessee, 3 Wake Forest, 4 Georgia Southern, 5 Kentucky, 6 South Carolina. I think the first potential tripping point is LSU. I think they win that, get it to 7.
I agree.
Oklahoma coming into town will not be an easy game, but I think they win that too. I think that pushes them to 8. Arkansas is dead in the water. That's 9, easy for me. The Georgia game, again, half and half. I'm going to go 9-10. Florida, though, in Gainesville in November. I think this all depends on the first half of the season. I think if you get a Florida team that is already kind of checked out by the end of their season, how brutal the schedule is, I think they could easily fall flat. But the Swamp is such a hard place to play, especially I think if this gets moved to a night game.
That's what I was about to say.
I think
give me the game time and I can give you a more definitive answer.
But for now, I'm taking Ole Miss in this game. And then getting Mississippi State at home, I think is really important for them to win that game. So sitting right at that 10.5, 11, 12 mark with Ole Miss.
I like them to go 12-0. I'm really high on Ole Miss this season.
Mm-hmm. Then moving on to Texas, Colorado State, they get first, easy win. Then how about at Michigan?
That's going to be a game.
Yeah. I like this Texas team a lot. I think they dropped the game at Michigan.
I'm going to go Texas here. Michigan only returning 34% of their production on offense.
The defensive line.
I don't think it's going to matter.
So good.
I don't think it's going to matter. I don't think Texas relies on the run game enough for the defensive line.
But Michigan has one of the best players in the entire country. It's an interior defensive lineman that I forgot his name, and I feel really bad about that because he's such an absolute beast. I noticed him on film watching Chris Jenkins this past year, but the Michigan interior defensive line, I think, gets so much pressure. I think they can make the difference here. So I'm going to stay at 1 for Texas. She'll go to 2. UTSA, ULM, Mississippi State, we all have easy wins, I'm pretty sure. So that's sitting at 4 for me and 5 for you, right? Yeah. So then I think the big trick point here, this 2-game set, Oklahoma, Georgia, I think they dropped one of those.
I could see that.
Definitely. So I'm going to have them sitting at 5-2 at that point in the season after the Georgia game. But it's such a difficult schedule because I think this Texas team is so good, and it's weird to say 5-2, but I didn't think they run the rest of the schedule and finish 10-2. I think they beat Vanderbilt. They get Florida at home. I think that's a murder. At Arkansas, they get Kentucky at home. Then at Texas A&M, that's going to be an amped up game, but I think Texas just has the talent over A&M, so I think they go 10-2 this year. You'd be seeing 11-1 for them.
I think when I just look at their schedule and just look at the games, I'm thinking 12-0. And the problem I'm running into is if I have Ole Miss going 12-0, if I have Texas going 12-0, and we're about to get to Missouri, who, looking at the schedule, I think they're going to go 12-0, 11-1. What happens in that situation? Who goes to the SEC title game? How does that work?
I'm pretty sure it's a points for tiebreaker there,
and that would be insane if there were 3 undefeated SEC teams. That's probably not going to happen, but if you made me pick each one of these games, I'm taking Missouri, Texas, and Ole Miss to win all their regular season games.
Yeah, and let's go to the Missouri schedule here because I think this is a team that they're returning a lot of their production. They obviously lose Cody Schrader, and they lose the top 2 corners, Chris Abrams-Drain and Ennis Rakestraw. They lose Darius Robinson, but a lot of this team is coming back. You have Brady Cook back, Luther Burden is back, and those, I think, are the especially big 2 for this team.
I mean, look at these first 7 games.
Yeah.
I don't see they're
Murray
in a world where they lose one of the first 7.
You start with Murray State, Buffalo, Boston College, Vanderbilt, Texas A&M.
At A&M is the toughest of those 7, but I still think they're going to get it done.
Yeah. Then UMass. Then they get Auburn at home.
That's
they take care of business there easily. I think they win at Alabama as well.
And that is the toughest game on their schedule by far.
Yeah.
You get Oklahoma at home after a bye week between that Alabama game and the South Carolina game.
I will say, I think if there's a random tripping point upset, it is South Carolina at Columbia because late in the season.
Only if it's at night. If it's at night, then maybe. If it's at 3:30,
it's like we talked about with Florida Ole Miss. If you draw a night game, it becomes a big tripping point. But then Mississippi State and Arkansas, especially getting the Arkansas rivalry in Missouri, I think it's such an easy game as well. I think Missouri goes undefeated.
Yeah, and based on this schedule, I think Brady Cook's going to be in New York.
Yeah,
Heisman ceremony.
I think there's a possibility that all 4 Heisman finalists are these 4 teams quarterbacks.
I can see the same thing.
Beck, Ewers, Dart, and Cook.
Yeah.
I think the one player out of these 4 that I would really say is a great shot is Dylan Gabriel of Oregon. Yeah. I would expect to see him there. And then maybe Oklahoma State's Ollie Gordon if they have a good year out in the Big 12. But yeah, it's going to be a great year in the SEC. Looking to
what a Heisman ceremony that would be 4 SEC quarterbacks, and
I'm sure no one would be upset whatsoever.
And we have these we have these four like having pretty good seasons too.
Yeah.
So that could make for a very dramatic December, January. So that would definitely be a very fun scenario.
I'd be super excited for that. And speaking of the Heisman, let's talk about the NCAA football game where the Heisman edition prize has been revealed to be $150. What features would have to be held out of the regular game, but in the Heisman edition?
$70 or two. Like if this game has a Madden Ultimate Team, I don't know what the word is, mode. If they have like an Ultimate Team mode, I'm just not going to play it. I'm not going to play it.
See, my question is, if there's no Ultimate Team, what could possibly be in the Heisman edition?
First, I don't get it at all. I will not be buying the Heisman edition unless I get to like coach a real football team in NCAA. I don't really get the point. I've never really been a fan of the deluxe edition game.
Me neither.
I kind of just tend to go with the generalized version, but definitely a lot of anticipation. We both grew up playing that game. So.
And we did get a cover finally, and the cover looks amazing. There were a lot of people like, well, why do we have a random Michigan running back in the middle of the cover? I think it's a great nod to the old NCAA 14 game, the last game, to have Michigan at the center of like both ends of it coming back. I think that's really cool. And Donovan Edwards is a really good player as well. And then Quinn Ewers, Carson Beck still on the cover there. I think they did a great job with this for sure. I'm so hyped for the game to come out. Definitely, I'm so ready. Cannot come
mid-July. Mid-July. Can't wait. I think that pretty much wraps it up for NCAA football talk. You got anything else you want to touch on there?
Nope, but it is time to move over to something that we are introducing to the pod this week, and that is the NBA, courtesy of Luke Fessler and JC Mitchell, who both had questions about the NBA. And let's start off with this Mavericks Thunder series, where we were talking about yesterday, man, if the Thunder lose this game, they could be on the ropes, but they were able to pull it back thanks to a good late game run and a couple little messy plays from the Mavericks towards the end of that game.
Yeah, and first let's talk about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, man. He poured in, I think it was 34 points without making a single three. Most of these were just like in the mid-range. He's definitely, in my opinion, the best scorer off the dribble in the mid-range in the NBA. He had that one shot on the baseline, kind of falling away toward the baseline.
I have no idea how that went in, kind of over the back.
Yeah, just a crazy look off the dribble, got it to go. I thought the Mavs were in trouble after watching Game 1. Luka was hobbling around quite a bit. I saw a lot of people saying, "Oh, Luka's a little bit injured. This might be a sweep." But then the next game, Luka comes out and carries the team. I think he had over 35 points, got the win there in Game 2, won Game 3 in pretty decisive fashion. Game 4 looked like the Mavericks really had a stranglehold of the game for at least 3+ quarters of it. And then, like we said, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander shows up. Cason Wallace shows up on the defensive end. If you made me pick this series, I'm going to take the Mavs in 7. I like Luka Doncic's ability to score off the dribble and set up his teammates a lot. My one red flag, Luke Fessler, is that your boy Luka Doncic does not play a lick of defense.
Not at all.
And so the issue there is you always have a point of attack. You get a screen and get Shai Gilgeous-Alexander switched on to Luka, and I'm sorry, that is burnt toast. Like Luka cannot guard anybody to save his life. He would not be able to guard your grandma at a park. He just doesn't play defense. I'm not sure what the problem is there. The Mavericks have built a team around him to try to kind of supplement the fact that he doesn't play defense. You got a lot of great defenders on that team in PJ Washington, in Derek Lively. Kyrie Irving, a really good on-the-ball defender, but Luka Doncic just does not play a lick of defense, and I think that's why he's not going to win any championships unless you build just an absolutely ridiculous defensive team around him. And he's really the only superstar that I can say that about that is just so elite on one end of the floor, being the offensive end of the floor, and then just, oh my gosh, he's probably the worst superstar I've ever seen defensively, which is pretty hard to see.
This is my issue with Luka is everyone's always asked, when's Luka going to get that MVP award? And for me, just the way I watch basketball, I can't give the MVP to a guy who is just that awful on one end of the floor.
You can't just ignore half the possessions on the basketball floor. You cannot tell me that Luka Doncic is a more valuable player than even a guy like Anthony Edwards, who is 22 years old, and I would say the best two-way player in the NBA if you combine his offense and his defense.
He's definitely right up there for sure, which is crazy at how young he is. But before we move on to talking about Anthony Edwards a bit more, I do want to say as far as this series goes, I say to be able to steal that game in Dallas is absolutely huge for the Thunder, especially going back to Oklahoma City now for Game 5. I think that's such a huge boost in momentum. At this point, I would take the Thunder to win the series. Shout out my guy Jack Corbett, big Thunder fan. But
I think the Thunder
they can do it.
I think the Thunder are 1 year away. I love their young core. I think this has been a great kind of introduction to high-level playoff basketball. I think they're doing a great job. I could definitely see them winning this series.
I think they're 1 year away too, but I think they win this and then get obliterated by the winner of.
It doesn't matter. It does not matter who wins this series. The winner of the other series, Timberwolves Nuggets, is going to the NBA Finals, and that I will not take any questions about that. But I do think the Mavericks have the edge just in that Kyrie Irving has been here before. Luka Doncic has been here before. Despite his defensive woes, I mean, you think about it, that he took the Mavs to the Western Conference Finals in 2022 he did have Jalen Brunson on that team, but a much less talented overall roster in that year than this year. And now you combine that with a guy like Kyrie Irving, who has all that finals experience in Cleveland, has made a lot of big-time shots over his career at several different stops. And I'm pulling for the Thunder to win this series. Sorry, Luke Fessler, but I think the Mavs are going to get it done in 7, and I hope it goes 7 because that would definitely bring about a lot of anticipation and be super exciting.
Yeah, I think there is something to be said here for just kind of the blissful ignorance of youth of like, oh, we haven't been here before. We don't have like that.
I can see that.
I think that's kind of the Thunder's strong point here is all these guys, they're already kind of playing with house money at this point, coming in at the 1 seed where no one expected them to be up there, and you just have this pure energy. OKC has been rocking in these playoffs. It's been super entertaining to watch. I think just the energy of the Thunder is going to be enough to carry them through this series, but like I said, I don't think they can hold a candle to...
And they
Bulls or Nuggets.
They have the best chemistry in the NBA.
They do.
A lot of young guys. Every interview you see after the game, it's not one guy. It's the whole team.
Yeah.
They're interviewing Shai Gilgeous-Alexander most of the time, but then you'll have other guys in the background. I think I saw everyone on the roster last night in the post-game interview except Josh Giddey. He didn't get invited to the post-game interview.
I wonder why that was.
For some reason. But definitely a really fun team. They have a really bright future. A lot of those guys under some pretty long-term contracts, great deals, and they have the most first-round picks over the next 10 years. So, man, they could build something special in Oklahoma City. I think they're an immediate championship contender if you bring in a really solid wing to pair with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Chet Holmgren, who has already been an incredible rim protector. He made some plays down the stretch in that game.
So who would be your perfect fit to bring in for the Thunder? If you could have any player to bring in on that team that you think is in the realm of possibility, who would you bring in?
Let's see. In a perfect world, I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. That's too short of notice, but
we'll have that answer next week.
Maybe in next week I'll be able to get that back to you.
All right. Well, let's move on to talk about another guy who, if I'm correct in saying, is your favorite player in the NBA right now, not named Steph Curry, and that is Anthony Edwards of the Minnesota Timberwolves. And we had a question from friend of the pod, JC Mitchell, of would we rather start a team with him or Victor Wembanyama if we're starting tomorrow? And I decided to get into this. Yeah,
so tough.
I think we have different answers as well.
This is really tough because Victor Wembanyama is no doubt in my mind going to be the best player we have ever seen on the defensive end in NBA history. He's extremely long. We know that. We know he can make shots off the dribble. We know the impact he has on defense. It's not even just blocking shots. People just do not go for wide open layups when he's anywhere near.
Because why would you?
Because if you go on YouTube and search up drives to the basket against Victor Wembanyama, almost every single time, even if he doesn't put his hands up, the offensive player's shot, their layup is altered. They have to pump fake, or even they just anticipate Victor Wembanyama putting up those really long arms. And
It's like playing
There's
versus a
just
sentient tree. There's just nothing you can do.
Yeah, he's just an absolute alien. With all that being said, Anthony Edwards is just a dog on both ends of the floor. He's everything you want out of a young superstar. Number one, he's young. He's 22, obviously. He's a leader both on the court and off the court. Takes accountability in losses. I think back to after Game 3 where he just said he took responsibility for the loss. Said the loss was on him. He just didn't come out with enough energy. I thought that was the truth, and I was impressed that he was owning up to that. But this guy, like he said after Game 1, he just wants to kill everything in front of him on the offensive end. He's not afraid to go up and try to posterize guys like Victor Wembanyama. He's one of the few guys that you'll actually see challenge these elite rim protectors on a consistent basis. He can shoot the three. He can shoot the mid-range. His footwork's insane. He can spin off the dribble, make a free throw line shot. He's the guy I want with the ball in his hands more than any player in the NBA right now. And that's crazy because he's 22 years old. And then having been talked a lick about his defense.
It's so good.
He's one of the best on-ball perimeter defenders in the NBA. And that is partly why the Timberwolves have built this just incredible defensive team around him, because you can afford to. Unlike Luka, who is better on the offensive end right now than Anthony Edwards is. Anthony Edwards is just one tick below Luka on the offensive end, and about a billion ahead on the defensive end. So you don't have to build a team around and that supplements that perimeter defense. You don't have to have the most elite small defenders around him to guard who he should be guarding, because you can just stick Ant on whoever that guy is. For the Nuggets, that's Jamal Murray, and Jamal Murray was shut down in those first two games.
He's absolutely in jail.
And what this allows the Timberwolves to do is to focus on rim protection. They have two elite rim protectors, four-time defensive player of the year in Rudy Gobert, and then Karl Anthony Towns, who is, as Anthony Edwards has mentioned, and I will co-sign on this, the biggest mismatch in the NBA, because you have to stick a big guy on Gobert, because he's gonna get his elbows inside on the offensive glass, the defensive glass. But Cat can stretch the floor. He can make the three.
Yeah.
And we've seen him make contested ones. We've seen him make wide open ones. We've seen him make ones in the clutch. And so this Timberwolves team is just so perfectly constructed to beat a team like the Nuggets.
Well, I think you've seen it too. We've seen it over the last couple of years. No one really knows what to do with Jokic and Nuggets in the playoffs, and that duo of Gobert and Towns is really the only combination that's been able to work on Jokic.
And I think there were teams built to be LeBron, and now we're seeing teams built to be Jokic. And obviously, the Nuggets pushing back a little bit in this series. At the time of this recording, we still don't know what's going to happen in Game 5. You will have known what happened in Game 5 by the time you're watching this, but kind of anticipatory in that aspect. But then another guy we haven't talked about is Jaden McDaniels, who can lock up a guy like Kevin Durant, like we saw in the Suns series, in which they were able to sweep. This is just one of the best defensive teams we've seen in the NBA in the past decade, because it's shifted so much into an offensive league that you just don't see teams like the Timberwolves that can just lock you down.
And then when you do, no one else knows what to do.
Held the Nuggets to 80 points in Game 1, and they're still pretty elite on the offensive end of the floor too. So it took me a long time to get there, but personally, I'm taking Anthony Edwards.
Yeah, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. I'm going to take Victor Wembanyama. I think, like you said, the defensive potential of Wembanyama is just absolutely... Well, not to make a pun of the alien thing, but it is out of this world for Victor Wembanyama. And then he does have the ability to score as well. Like, he's not just a pure defensive guy. And I think if you can actually build around him, I know the Spurs aren't really in a position to do that right now with how bad the rest of that team is, but I think if you get a roster around this guy, you get scorers around him. There's such a great potential there, because you have Wembanyama down low, who can really just you can toss it down to whenever you want. You can have him on the defensive end just kind of locking up. And then also, if you have him defending down low, if you can get good kind of two-way backcourt players on the outside. Yeah. I think that's a real recipe for success, having him down low. So it's really kind of two different team builds, Wembanyama versus Anthony Edwards. But I personally am going to take Wembanyama just because I think there's nothing else like him right now.
Yeah, and the perfect fit, just spacing-wise, like, I hate to say this as a Hawks fan, but Trae Young with the Spurs, that would be a match made in heaven spacing-wise, just because, like, you can do so much with the pick and roll with Victor Wembanyama and Trae Young. Trae Young racks up assists on a really bad Hawks team. So I think that would be a match made in heaven. The Spurs rather do have that number 6 pick in the NBA draft. I think a guy like Rob Dillingham would be a really good fit there as well.
That would be very fun.
Yeah, but definitely Wemby and Ant. That's going to be, like, I'm taking Ant as you asked me today, but over the next decade and a half, like, these are going to be two of the best 5-10 players in the NBA.
I think 5 years from now, this is your NBA face of the leagues posters. These two guys on the. I think you can
maybe even younger than that.
I think it takes a while for Jokic to get shuffled out there before it's just
these guys are just so much more marketable than Jokic, because Jokic is like, please let me go back to Serbia to meet my horse.
Jokic has his own kind of, I know you won't necessarily get this example, but it's kind of the like Kimi Räikkönen in Formula One, where he was so elite, but he obviously did not want to be there, and it was just a hobby, and he became one of the most favorite drivers in the entire sport. And because of that personality. So I think you're seeing a similar thing with Jokic. But like you said, it's splitting hairs here with these two guys for sure. We could talk about this all day, but let's move on here to another thing we don't talk about much in the NHL, really branching out this week. And so we also have a question about the Dallas Stars, who have taken a 3-1 series lead over the Colorado Avalanche. And how about Wyatt Johnson? He actually became last night one of only 2 players ever to score a shorthanded goal and a power play goal in the same playoff game before turning 20. And guess who the other player is on that list?
I'll let you reveal it this time.
Yeah, it's Wayne Gretzky. I know, shocker.
Decent
hockey record with
decent company. Decent company, I'd say. If your name is mentioned in the same sentence as the GOAT of all GOATs, I like to say it. Then
especially if it's just you or him.
Yeah, you're doing something right here.
And also, for the Avs, the huge blow of losing Valentin Chuskin to the player rehab program for the alcoholism stuff.
Saw that breaking news while we were watching the Canes game the other night.
You hate to see that, obviously, and turns out in a Chuskin, you hope he can kind of get through that and overcome it. But as far as just the purely hockey side of it, I think this really opens the door for Dallas now, especially 3-1 lead versus this kind of now hobbled Avs team. I think you see them win this series pretty easily. And coming into the playoffs, these Stars were my pick to win the Stanley Cup, so I like them a lot. The veteran and young guy present on this team, you have Jason Robertson, Wyatt Johnson, Miro Haskin, and at the same time, veterans like Jamie Benn, Joe Pavelski, and then just the absolute monster that's Jake Ottinger in net. They have so many things going for them. I love the way this team is constructed. So I definitely think they're the team to beat out of the West. Then as for the East, I think the winner of this Carolina-New York series is who you see at the Stanley Cup final, and Carolina's making it a series right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Calling back to 3-2 from 3-0, looking to become only the 5th team in NHL history to come back from a 3-0 deficit. And early on in that Game 5, it was looking like more of the same. I mean, Carolina giving up another shorthanded goal to the Rangers.
The power play
their first power play.
Yeah.
And then, but it was like right after that, they just kind of flipped a switch. Those 3 goals in not too long of a span right after that. Obviously Trouba with the shorthanded goal. You don't like to see that as a Canes fan, and the power play struggles are continuing. But to go down 1-0 in Madison Square Garden,
especially versus Shesterkin,
and then 3 unanswered goals, against Shesterkin, who has been just locked down in these playoffs. I think, man, you get back to Raleigh on Thursday, and the Rangers, they're going to be clinching their butts a little bit.
Yeah, I like their chances in Game 6. I do, Carolina. It's just having to play Game 7 back in MSG. That crowd is going to be rocking. I still think the Rangers get it done, although if you're asking to pick, I do think it goes 7 now because of bringing that momentum back to Raleigh. The whole Carolina Hurricanes cause chaos thing in Raleigh, I think, is really going to be on their side as well. 5-on-5 looked much better in this game versus the Rangers than any other in the series so far. Just more cohesion. Carolina looks much less lost in the offensive zone. It's not just kind of firing pucks up in that endlessly, hoping one gets by. Just
Please.
they're really kind of finding their lanes, picking shots, and you're really seeing it work out for them a lot better. And obviously, you've got to figure out that power play. Rod Brindamore is obviously not happy with that right now, but these are two of the best teams in the NHL on special teams, and it's really been the Rangers leading the special teams battle. 2 shorthanded goals in the series, as you mentioned earlier, but I think if Carolina can somehow flick a switch on this power play, that'll be an absolute massive difference for them, and I think that's the way they come back and win this series, is if they can get that power play going, because the Reds haven't been shy to blow the whistle in this series.
No.
But that is it for hockey. We would talk about Canucks Oilers and then Panthers Bruins, but those games are both happening tonight, and you will know the outcome. We will not. Panthers obviously could clinch tonight, so we'll have to see if that happens. Those have been 2 entertaining series as well, but that is actually it for this week, and we will see you guys again next time.